Good afternoon. I'm Bob Wan. I'm a PhD candidate in economics at Clemson University. It's my pleasure to present my work here about the power of marriage, the causal effect of parents' marital stability on the child's adult earnings. A stable marriage between parents plays an essential role in the child's well-being. Unfortunately, the percentage of two-parent families has dropped over time in the United States from 75% in 1968 to 64% in 2017. Have you ever wondered if your childhood family structure or your parents' marital stability during your childhood affects your adult earnings? Using the panel study of income dynamics, PSID surveys data, I observed that adult children's hourly earnings are associated with their parents' marital stability. The children who grew up in intact families where their parents maintain a stable marriage earn more than their counterparts reared by parents with unstable marriage across all ages. A stable parental marriage is defined as parents living together and maintaining marriage or cohabiting for all the 16 years of their offspring's childhood. If the parents have ever divorced, separated, or widowed during that period, I categorize them as parents with an unstable marriage. The correlation between the child's adult earnings and the parents' marital stability does not necessarily mean causality. My research is to determine whether there is a causal relationship between them. I also investigate the mechanism behind the parents' marital stability effect on the child's adult earnings and how this effect changes with parental and child's factors. In previous studies, there was a lack of consensus on the parents' marriage effect on the child's adult earnings. Lang and Zagorski found no evidence that the parental presence affect the child's adult earnings after controlling for a variety of factors, such as parental educational attainment and the child's region and race dummies. Correct found parental divorce effect on the son's adult earnings. It lowers the son's adult earnings by 3%, but it has no effect on daughters. Kane et al. Found that parental separation or divorce reduce their children's education, that reduce their children's earnings between 3% and 12%. On the other hand, most studies found that parental divorce has a detrimental effect on the child's educational attainment and marital behavior. For example, LaFauna found that the parental divorce is linked to poorer educational attainment of their children. This effect varies with ages and is more detrimental to boys. In my research, I link the parents' marital status to their child's adult earnings using the PSID surveys data. I look at the parents' marital status in the 16 years of their offspring's childhood instead of at a certain point in time. This is a new angle to look at the parents' marital effect on the child's adult earnings. The challenging part of finding the causal effect is how to deal with the unobserved parental and child factors that are correlated with both the parents' marital stability and the child's adult earnings. I take advantage of the Clan-Descendant structure of the data and fit a clan fixed effect model, which is combined with the two-stage least squares method to alleviate the omitted variable bias. I also investigate the mechanism behind this effect. That is, the three channels through which the parental marriage influences the child-side dynamics. I find a positive and significant causal effect of a stable marriage on the child-side dynamics. It varies with parental income, parental education, and the child's gender. To identify the causal effect, I adopt three specification strategies. First, I include the parental household income and the parental educational attainment model to disentangle the parents' marital stability effect from the other parental influence. The child's demographic characteristics, such as the child's age, gender, region, race, and job tenure, are also control variables in the model because they are not randomly distributed between the children from stable families and the children from unstable families. Second, the Clan-Descendant structure of the model allows me to fit an clan fixed effects model. I draw a family tree to show this structure. The PSID surveys have traced individuals in the United States since 1968. They followed the children as they grew older and formed their own families, making it possible to link the children's information to their parents. For example, the original family, Bob and May, had two children, Amy and Grace. Grace formed her own family later and had children, Ivy and David. Bob and May remained married during Amy and Grace's childhood. Ivy and David were also raised by an intact family. By contrast, another clan, William and Emily, had two children, Jack and Ellen. Jack got divorced during his daughter Lily's childhood. I would expect to find that as adults, Lily would earn less on average than Ivy, David, and Alex. In my sample, there are more than 1,000 clans like this too. The descendants of a clan could be siblings or cousins. They could be the same generation or different generations. For example, the descendant PID11 is the uncle of all the other descendants within this clan in my sample. I assume that there's something in common that runs in the blood across generations of descendants. It is the clan-specific heterogeneity, such as family tradition and genetic characteristics. They are identical for all the descendants within a clan. I think a clan fixed effects model to account for this unobserved clan-specific heterogeneity. I also use two instrument variables, the state divorce rates and the no-fault divorce law effectiveness for the endogenous parents' marital stability. It can be verified that the two instruments are highly correlated with the parents' marital stability. It could be argued that the two instruments would not affect child-side earnings directly or indirectly through any channels other than parents' marriage. The fixed effects estimate for the parents' marital stability effect on the child-side earnings is about half of the pool OLS estimate. It implies the presence of the unobserved clan-specific heterogeneity. One example is the personality, unobserved personality. The quality of patience is passed down over generations. Patient parents are more likely to maintain a stable marriage than impatient parents. Children inherit their parents' patience. the child's patience has a positive impact on the child's job performance and their earnings. Another example is the attractiveness, which is also positively correlated with the child's adult earnings and the parents' marital stability. It will lead to an upward bias in the OLS without considering this type of unobserved factors. The fixed effects model is more appropriate in this situation. The LM test confirms the presence of the panel effects, and the Hausmann test prefers the fixed effects to the random effects. In the two-stage least squares, the first stage regressions verify a strong correlation between the instruments and the parents' marital stability. From the first column of the table, 1% increase in the state divorce rate is associated with a 15% decrease in the probability of a stable marriage in the parents living in that state. The no-fault divorce law effectiveness also influence the parents' marital behavior. From the second column, the implementation of the no-fault divorce law reduces the probability of a stable marriage by 20%. The first stage summary statistics show that these instruments are not weak instruments because they have decent explanatory power and prediction ability. The two-stage least squares estimate is 0.161, which is slightly smaller than the OLS estimate, 0.168. The OLS overestimates the effect because the omitted variables is correlated with the parents' marital stability and the child's adult earnings in the same direction. One example is the parents' social network. The parents with a stable marriage are more likely to have a stronger network of friends who could help their children with their jobs. So, the unobserved parents' social network is positively related to both the parents' marital stability and the child's adult earnings. Another example comes from the bad kid story. Parents could divorce because their kids are bad, in the sense that they cause too much trouble to their parents. The bad kids are more likely to do poorly in the labor market and earn less than the good kids in adulthood. Here, the kids' bad quality is negatively related to both the parents' marital stability and the child's adult earnings. In these two cases, it will lead to upward bias in OLS without considering the unobserved omitted variables. The two-stage least squares estimates are consistent because the two instrument variables, the state divorce rates and the no-fault divorce law effectiveness, would not change the children's quality or the parents' social network. Using these strategies, I find a positive and significant causal effect of a stable marriage on the child's adult earnings. Take the two-stage least squares. Estimate, as an example, the children who grew up in intact families where the parents maintained a stable marriage earn about 16% more than their counterparts reared by parents with an unstable marriage, on average, after holding relevant factors constant and accounting for the endogeneity problems. This effect goes through three channels. The parents with a stable marriage tend to invest more in their child's education and health. Their children are also more likely to maintain a stable marriage themselves. So, the education you receive, your health, and your marital behavior are the three immediate variables that represent the three channels through which your parents' marriage affects your adult earnings. The parents' marital stability effect on the child's adult earnings is neither identical for all the parental households nor for all children. It varies with different parental and child factors. This effect is increasing with the parental household income. The distance between the two lines are the earnings gap between the children from stable families and the children from unstable families, which is the parental marital stability effect on the child's adult earnings. It becomes larger and more significant as the parental income increases. That is to say, the parents' marital stability and the parents' income during the childhood reinforce each other in raising their child's adult earnings. I find a similar pattern for the better educated parents. A stable marriage between the well-educated parents helps their children earn more in adulthood and achieve a better life. The child's gender also matters. A stable marriage has a larger and more significant effect on the son's adult earnings than on the daughter's. We can also interpret this graph by focusing the children from stable families. Among them, there is a gender earnings gap. For the children from unstable families, however, there's no such a gender earnings gap. The right graph shows that the marital stability effect on the child's adult earnings is more noticeable in the middle of the child's career. The findings are robust to various specifications and approaches. When the child's self-selection into the labor force is taken into account, the estimates from the Heckman two-step procedure are close to those without correcting the sample selection bias. It implies that the self-selection bias is not severe. In the quantile regression for the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile of the child's hourly earnings, we could not reject the hypothesis, the Lung hypothesis, that the marital stability effects are the same for different quantiles in the child's earnings distribution. The marital stability effects for the child's adult earnings in the three childhood periods are not significantly different from each other. Finally, I consider the exogeneity setting of the parental educational attainment and the parental household income in the model. Parents usually complete their education before they have children or even before they have a marriage. So the factors that influence the children's adult earnings are not likely to affect the educational level the parents achieved. This is especially true in the clan-fixed effects model, when the unobserved genetic characteristics over generations have already been controlled. The parental household income, on the other hand, is more likely to be endogenous because it's related to the parent's marital status and the child's status. But there are two solutions to this issue. First, I can drop it because I have the parental educational attainment in the model, which can be seen as a proxy for the parental household income. However, the parental marital stability effect will absorb part of the parental income effect and become larger. For the purpose of separating the parent's marital stability from the other parental influence, I tend to include both the parental income and the parental education in the model, and use the second method to alleviate the possible endogeneity of the parental income. The second method is to use the two instrument variables, the state divorce rates and the no-fault divorce law effectiveness, for the two endogenous variables, the parental stability and the parental income. The estimate for the parent's marital stability on the child's adult earnings in this way is slightly lower than that when parental income is treated as an exogenous variable. Above are the main findings of my research. The positive and significant causal effect of a stable marriage on the child's adult earnings demonstrates the power of marriage. Thank you very much.